A preconceptual reality unconstrained by our understanding must and does exist. Questioning its existence would be like saying the universe does not exist unless we are there to perceive, understand, describe and narrate it within jargons we have been trained to use since childhood. The danger to a linear comprehension of facts is that it lives and breathes inside a sentence, along with nondescript expressive patterns whose limits accentuate our inability to perceive a self-reflection bounded by the circumstances which preoccupy us daily. And we conveniently forget that what we observe is highly dependent on the tools we employ in the process. Perception recreates to terms stipulated through multivariate socio-cultural conversions of discernment at our command on the moment of observation. What cannot be seen, described and known translated into now consistent and familiar stipulations oriented inexorably towards the temporal norms of the day. We are the products of social engineering which preserves a perceptual anomaly through contextual observances aligned with contrasting, similar or dissimilar schemas within a shared reality. We embrace the civilized contextual integrity of the day and ignore at our peril everything else. We ensnare through language a descriptive state. Why does everything have a name, and why do we see through names everything? Step back and look. Is there anything in front of your eyes you do not recognize? That is the anomaly. During early childhood, as babies experiment their way into a world unrelentingly defined, they confront experiences through a preconceptualized and non-conforming lens, leaving them equally open to the wonders of the possible and the impossible. Yet it is at that age that we may be teaching children in early childhood to conform predominantly to a reality which alienates them by betraying their subjective self, the preconceptual self predominantly active in very early childhood, from which babies gain and/or maintain their self-reliance while they are learning about our world. Without preconceived notions, without the prearranged context and the liability of social distinctions which rule and maintain a viable explanation of our world as we see it. During the socialization and enculturation process, are we not coercing children to accept the functional descriptive as prescribed interpretations of preconceptual reality, thus betraying the informal intuitive process which children rely on as they experiment their way into the world prior to conceptualization and speech? Could our graduated socialization process be flawed? Are we ensuring first and foremost the continuation of norms who are undermining and subverting the highly successful intuitive and intrinsic learning process children are born with? Many babies exercise a subjective emphasis geared to creative and emotional, intelligent awareness. Could employing intrinsic motivational variances in parenting and education empower your baby's natural curiosity into a highly adaptable lifelong learner? As adults, we don't think to question when we observe, since we are trained systematically through conditioning by our parents, educators, and significant others to perceive the world as they see it. And as such, we no longer question the authenticity of our common perspective. Through perceptual habit, we continuously reacquaint to familiar perceptual patterns, have, want, need formulas we enact in order to perform reliably within a shared common expression of reality created for and by us. The preconceptual state within us still exists at a deeper level, since unknowingly we first perceive through the preconceptual state and then translate immediately into contextual relevancy. Our consciousness, however, now conditioned and confined into a self-reflection of contextual folly, no longer recognizes it, since identity, the mainstay of perceptual arrangements, is mostly fearful of anything unrecognizable beyond the instruments of context it is reliant on. Yet we are equally connected to the totality of experience rendered outside of context, which, when translated into normative background, becomes something else. An animated description assimilated into background assemblages non-existent within the unknown, yet emphasized as a function of correlations needed so that we can recognize and understand. It's a paradox. There is no explanation, as language leaves no footprint within the unknown, but everything is there, available beyond the terms of cognition within the realm of awareness. Our relationship to the unknown does not exist as we understand it, since we disguise it by creating metaphors which seem to relate as a function of customized perception and meaning consistent to the tools of context employed at the time. Hence, we inadvertently approach the unknown through conveyances in harmony with what is already understood by assimilating a pre-existing arrangement or context in place of what cannot be described, known, or understood. Einstein's theory of relativity is a good example of this. In essence, we create a position through which we engage the unknown and then validate its existence by proxy, a de facto acknowledgement of the state the reader is in, interpreting this theory. As if the linear configuration needed to understand each word in succession creates an ever-expanding context substantiating familiar perception beyond the read. Whereas we cracked a window open which merely quantifies the discernment and limits of the tools and methods applied at that moment. The whole shebang, if it can be called as such, with its myriad inflections of what is out there, is a singularity beyond names and forms, and what we get is the refraction of light filtering through a segmented approach particularly applied. The point is, the perceptual outline through which we exercise the linear narrative is employed as a constant in a word whose emphasis through explanation and understanding constraints perceptual engagements through the very narrow anthropogenic spectrum of the day. What about all the rest which does not exist to us, since we cannot even begin to imagine what that is? We slice and parcel either bluntly or with exquisite style and presence, and the footprint that emerges is the limit to our momentary presence. Our perception is the variance between the seer and the seen, yet the seer and the seen is one and the same in many ancient texts. The arrangement through which we see may be incompatible with what is seen, so that what we see is the reflection of how we see rather than what is there. The ambivalence in quantum physics is the acknowledgement of the witness which alters the way particles act when observed. In the same manner yet differently, translating any aspects of the known from the unknown alters both who we are as witnesses in relationship to it and what it becomes due to its affiliation with a discernment tailored to an indigenous focus. Hence, we do not need to understand the unknown, since it is a vast expanse way beyond the competence of expertise, and as soon as we delineate it proportionately, it takes on the perspective of that description. By objectifying the unknown, we make it into something it is not. We create two states. The reality of the unknown as it actually is, raw beyond description as a whole and preconceptual, and our objectified understanding of the unknown as we observe it through the tools available for its perception and the disbursement of plausible or implausible cognitive results palatable to pre-existing frames of references. Furthermore, objectified results create the illusion of separation. Duality makes us the fish out of water, and the last gasps we take are tantamount to a lifetime of quirks. Narrow in scope, we are unable to grasp that the position of awareness we gain through objectified results do not put us in the driver's seat, but makes us aware of a temporal, functional, interactive, conducive to a particular emphasis. It is a misdirection. We are driven by functionality and interoperability and often become myopic to the rest and certainly to the whole. To put it more bluntly, singular approaches are too consistent to a highly intelligent world of innumerable inflections whose myriad shades and indiscernible hues hints to perceptual unaccountability, meaning our pre-expectations substantiate what is perceived and the rest remains unaccountable as if it did not exist, or if accountable, reacts through a medium in which understanding as a cohesive arrangement from which to approach, say, entanglement, is unnecessary to say interoperability in the manner understanding assembles it. To say we have an effect is an oversimplified version which offers little credence to the long version. Understanding has to disengage from the process in order to observe a linear end, but these events may not be conducive to disengagement, or may at best provide a paradigm that could be synchronous yet impossible to observe in the manner we practice it. However, by approaching the unknown subjectively and in an oblique manner outside of the tools of context yet within the realm of awareness, we can begin to explore it on terms which facilitates its discovery. We interact at that point with the unknown in ways we cannot understand, altering an outlier-based standpoint mirroring contextual variables as the mainstay of identity towards an undefined yet highly adaptable position more closely aligned with that. Who are we? We assume we are the socialized, detailed, that experiential summary characterized and depicted through a linear narrative overburdened with contextual pageantry marking significant events and compiled into a designated avatar that looks and speaks like us. But we really don't know who we are nor what we are capable of outside the known. Observe without judgment how you operate the avatar you pretend to be through speech, act and thought. You may attain clarity and inner freedom through this well-trodden practice. Knowing as we practice it is a temporal and dictatorial state, an impermanent relationship fashioned through linguistically defined patronage, a perceptual dynamism indigenous to words, contexts, and the endless advocacy of drama we careen into as a matter of principle, belief, or other. Many people ride the surface of the waves where turbulence is at its peak, while others, more audacious, practice self-inquiry and challenge the known. Many ancient philosophies and religions call them warriors, perceptual warriors. Perceptual warriors, they are in the world but not of the world. They don't reflect the world as you know it. They are true human beings, explorers of reality, self-directed heirs of ancient knowledge now forgotten. Visit us at teachtolearning.com.